I tell a story about Muhammad Ali, the boxer Muhammad Ali, who went to fight a fight in Africa. And rather than setting up training camp here in America to be supportive, he set up camp there and spent a month there. When he came back, they said, Muhammad, what'd you think of Africa? And he said, quote, "Thank God my granddaddy got on that boat." How do you look at the Middle East and decide the problem isn't the homophobic, xenophobic, misogynistic, Islamic fascists? The problem's that tiny liberal democracy of Jews.
Why were the good liberals unable to push back against any of this?
They were incredibly aggressive as they cleansed the schools and the entertainment industry of the last of the remaining generations. Maher went to the White House the other day.
First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me.
I'm probably the only person in the entire world who's written for both Maher and Trump.
Tell me the difference between writing for Bill Maher and writing for Donald Trump.
So when I walked into a Republican meeting for the first time, I heard something I'd never heard before. I heard people who could argue in the affirmative for the things they believe. Mm-hmm. They could tell you why they believe, what they believe, how it works, where it has worked in the past. You never hear anything in the affirmative from the political left. You only hear he's a Nazi, he's a fascist, he's a homophobe, he's a xenophobe. Though we cannot have a party with any chance of power that hates America. The left leaves us no alternative. Then the only alternative is the far right.
And what do you think the best way to deprogram the people that are being, sold into this set of obvious lies? I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report, and joining me today is an author, a comedian, a conservative speaker, and more, Evan Sayet. Evan, how are you?
I am so good, David. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Can I call you a conservative speaker? I was going through your resume here. A lot of conservative stuff, but you're kind of an old school lib. I mean, I guess we have a similar journey, I suppose.
Very, very much so. I say I'm in the conservative thought industry. So I sell my thoughts in a wide variety of ways, sometimes humorous, sometimes not so humorous, but always now in an attempt to be on the right side of things.
Yeah, a conservative thought person. What's going on in the world of conservative thought these days? It seems to me that most sane people are basically conservatives at this point, that there's kind of a wide tent conservative thing happening, and that's what most of us are, whether we like the C word or not.
Indeed. Well, let's start with the fact that I'm not a right-wing fanatic. I'm an anti-left-wing fanatic. And what I've come to recognize, look, I'm still the same New York City-born liberal, lowercase L Jew in the entertainment industry I always was. The problem is at a certain point, they've moved so far left that liberalism, true liberalism, lowercase L liberalism, resides right of center. If you wish to conserve a liberal democracy, then you have to be a conservative in this two-party system.
Yeah, the line I keep using on this is conservative in the streets, liberal in the sheets. Like, it's sort of like no one really cares what you're doing in your own private life for the most part, if you're an American. But you need some conservatives to kind of put up the walls, literally and figuratively, to protect that liberalism. What happened to the liberals, do you think? I mean, my audience has heard some version of this conversation many times, obviously, because this is kind of my own political journey. But I'm always interested in seeing if someone has the right sort of prescription or autopsy on what happened to the good liberals who most of us used to be.
Well, you have to go back to the 60s radicals and their attempt to violently overthrow Western civilization and this country. They declared war. They literally declared war. Bernadine Dorn, the wife of William Ayres, founder of the terror group, the Weather Underground, took to a bank of microphones and said, "Hi, I'm Bernadine Dorn, and I'm going to read to you a declaration of war." And they tried to foment revolution. The problem is they couldn't get anybody to join them. The problem was, even though back then there really were some real and serious wrongs and oppressions, Jim Crow, segregation, even then, the people who were being oppressed still recognized they had it better in America than they had it anywhere else because they knew the world. Many of them were first or second generation immigrants. Others had just come back from World War II and seen what the rest of the world is like. And in one of my books, I think The Woke Supremacy, I tell a story about Muhammad Ali, the boxer Muhammad Ali, who went to fight a fight in Africa. And rather than setting up training camp here in America to be supportive, he set up camp there and spent a month there. And when he came back, they said, Muhammad, what'd you think of Africa? And he said, quote, "Thank God my granddaddy got on that boat."
Huh.
Remember, this is not only a black man from the Jim Crow South. At this point, he converted to Islam. This was a black Muslim man from the Jim Crow South. And still, he recognized that as many injustices that still needed to be fought, America was still a far greater place than any place else in the world. So they couldn't get people to join their revolution. They went underground and they went on what's called the Long March through the institutions. Slowly over time, they became the powers that be in academia and journalism, education and entertainment. And they used the institutions to brainwash successive generations into being those warriors that they couldn't get earlier because they were educated by the real world. So Mark Rudd, one more thing, and I don't mean to filibuster.
Yeah. No.
Mark Rudd, who is one of those original radicals, a bloodthirsty, horrible human being, said the true flowering of the 60s revolution, will come in the 90s when we've taken over the institutions. Well, he was wrong only because he missed the obvious. Once they'd taken over the institutions, they'd need one more generation to then use those institutions to create their warriors. So, Dave, if it's 30 years from the 60s to the 90s, what's 30 years from the 90s?
That's right about now.
Right about now, which is why they're using the same language that they wouldn't have used. Even 15 years ago, Barack Obama was still calling it fundamental change, whereas Bernie Sanders is calling it what it is, revolution.
We talk a lot on this show about waking up, not just politically, but physically too. And what you put in your body to start the day matters. That's why I drink 1775 coffee. Their Rejuvenate Roast is a bold, dark roast infused with a compound that supports energy and recovery. Some research even suggests this compound can help reverse biological age by up to 8 years. If you want even more focus and clarity, they've got a mushroom coffee too, packed with 5 functional mushrooms like lion's mane and cordyceps to keep you sharp, energized, and dialed in. It's single origin coffee roasted fresh every week in Miami by people who actually believe in freedom, truth, and responsibility. No woke branding, no corporate nonsense. Just great coffee that shares the values we talk about here every single day. Head on over to 1775coffee.com. Use code Rubin for 15% off and start your day with coffee that stands for truth, freedom, and the country that you believe in. Right. And they, for a while, were calling them Democrat socialists. And I said they were going to drop the Democrat part. And now they are just socialists. I think we have probably open communists in our government as well. And it's really gone off the rails. Why did the good liberals then, not the radicals, why were the good liberals unable to push back against any of this? Why does that put guys like you and I now with that small c conservative?
Two things. One is they were incredibly aggressive as they cleansed the schools and the entertainment industry of the last of the remaining generations and that countervailing influence, but also natural attrition. The older generation, the last of the great generations, passed on, and we were remiss in fighting back because things were so easy, things were so good that, you know what, we could be this open-minded because nothing bad could happen to America. I'm a little bit older than you are, but I think you saw this time in America as well, where it was forever going to be, America was forever going to be prosperous. America was always going to be safe. America was never going to be challenged. And thus, if there are no consequences to being wrong, we didn't stand up enough for what's right.
So as a guy that's gone through Hollywood and you worked for Bill Maher actually on Politically Incorrect, and you've done some stuff with Letterman over the years. You've been around the block. You've also written for Donald Trump. I mean, you've really had quite a resume here.
I do believe. I'm just so hyped up. I'm so happy to be with you. But I do believe when Maher went to the White House the other day, I'm probably the only person in the entire world who's written for both Maher and Trump.
That's whether that bodes well for your future in the industry. I can't I can't tell you. But so as someone that's been through the entertainment side of things and through politics and everything else, what do you make of this moment we're in right now where these things seemingly have collided into each other and there's very little distinction between politics and comedy, which I guess gets a guy like Bill Maher at the White House in the first place?
Right, indeed. Look, comedy has always served a political purpose. Even when Johnny Carson was apolitical, seemingly so, people still got their news from Johnny Carson. And it may have been a more subtle delivery, but nonetheless, a lot of the liberalism, lowercase L liberalism, we got from Johnny. We got our mores and acceptable morals by the jokes he laughed at or the jokes he presented or the guests he put on. So
right. It was political, not partisan, I guess is the way you put it.
That's brilliant. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now we have so atomized our delivery system. You know, there were 3 networks back then. Suddenly there were 103 and now 1,003. And so you no longer need to have this general audience where everybody sits down together, everybody watches the same thing. That the politics has become atomized as well. Very little chance that one of my ideological cohorts is going to be watching the Stephen Colbert Show. Conversely, very little chance that one of my ideological opponents, is going to be watching Gutfeld.
Tell me the difference between writing for Bill Maher and writing for Donald Trump.
Maher would more often say what I wrote. It wasn't that Trump didn't say what I wrote. It's that he said a lot of things I didn't write in between. Right, and that can be a tad frustrating because if you're a craftsman, as I am, and that's not just a pat on the back, I'm paid to be that. A joke is not just the funny punchline. The joke is every word that leads to it. It's heartbreaking and difficult sometimes. Whereas Maher, he's a pro and he nailed it time and again.
Yeah, I would imagine though at some level, Trump, because of his comedy chops, I guess you would say, in some sense, it must have been a little bit fun, even if he was kind of ad-libbing off your stuff, to watch him operate in that way.
No, it's fun watching him screw up other people's material, not mine.
not your material. So we're at this strange cultural moment, and the good libs, or the old school libs as you described, I think mostly are Republicans. What do you think can happen? I mean, in the last couple of weeks on my show, we've been covering it pretty extensively, just the absolute descent into madness that has happened with the left, and they have no leader anymore. The Democrat Party seems to be an absolute free fall. Will they hand this thing to the true radicals? Do they somehow bring in a moderate to make any sense of it? I mean, what do you think what do you want to happen, and what do you think will happen?
The problem with the political left is that they are not for anything. The idea is that believing in things, being for something, causes disagreements, fighting, and war. So the only way to live in a world where there's nothing to kill or die for, if you want to go to when John Lennon took this ideology and put it to song, in order for there to be nothing to kill or die for, there has to be nothing to live for. There has to be nothing positive. And this is one thing. When I first walked into my first Republican meeting, right, post 9/11. Wow. I don't even know where that came
How
from.
old is this guy?
I look good all of a sudden, right? But post 9/11 and the response of the political left, the idea that we deserved it, that it was the chickens coming home to roost, that the way to prevent further attacks was to be nicer to the terrorists. Well, this was insane to me. And so I had to think, if this is how liberals, if this is what people who are called liberals believe, then am I really a liberal? And Dave, I have an expression: the first time you think is the last time you're a Democrat. And so when I walked into a Republican meeting for the first time, I heard something I'd never heard before. I heard people who could argue in the affirmative for the things they believe. Mm-hmm. They can tell you why they believe, what they believe, how it works, where it has worked in the past. Whereas you never hear anything in the affirmative from the political left. You only hear he's a Nazi, he's a fascist, he's a homophobe, he's a xenophobe, so vote for us by default. And when that no longer works, and I believe they have so overused it, when that no longer works, they have nothing to say because there's nothing that they're for. They're against the police. They're against the border. They're against protecting children. They are the party of negation. And once that doesn't work. Once they can't scare them with us, it's over for them. The problem is this. There's so much damage that's been left in their wake that we have generation upon generation that is literally miserable. And, oh, I'm so sorry.
Uh-oh.
And
you might be saying that could be Ilhan calling you right now.
no, you know what? At least it's not a pager going off.
Yeah. I have a feeling you're okay in that department. Are you stuck in the yo-yo dieting cycle? You lose weight, gain it all back, plus a few extra pounds, then do it all over again? It's not just frustrating, it's dangerous. Studies show that repeated weight fluctuations can increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and other serious health problems. That's why doctors created Lean, a supplement designed to help you lose weight and keep it off. Unlike injections, Lean is a natural science-backed formula that requires no prescription. It works by supporting healthy blood sugar levels, controlling appetite, and burning fat by converting it into energy. If you're tired of losing weight just to gain it right back and you're ready to lose weight at a healthy, sustainable pace, Lean was made for you. Get 20% off your first order with code Rubin20 at takelean.com. That's Rubin20 at takelean.com. Start your journey today. But so what do you want? What do you want to happen to the Democrats? I mean, because to me, you do want in a pluralistic society of 350 million people, you want a healthy tension between liberals and conservatives. You want multiple parties. You want some back and forth so you never get exactly what you want, but they never get exactly what they want either. And so I want the Democrats to implode. It doesn't even come down to me wanting it. It's happening whether I want it or not. But on the other hand, if we end up in this kind of one party thing, that doesn't strike me as particularly good long term.
No, and ultimately what needs to happen is for every sane person to come over to become a Republican. We then split in half and we become the conservatives, because people misunderstand and they get angry. We are not the conservative party. We are the Republican Party, which means when they call people rhinos, they're not rhinos. They're just not conservatives. And what eventually will have to happen is that those they call the rhinos, the more moderate non-conservatives, will go back and become the equivalent of the Democrat Party, just like they used to be. At the soul, though, we cannot have a party with any chance of power that hates America. We cannot have a party that is so desperate to show that nothing is true, that science is wholly irrelevant to them. Men can't have babies. We can't have a party that embraces our enemies because they so despise us that they would rather march on the street queers for Palestine than to wave an American flag. But I think we've gotten to a point now where those people like Bill Maher put aside his personal dislike for Trump. Well, Trump's not going to be running in 4 years. Or when all these people have come over to our side will split into two and will return to the two equal parties, one of which is more to the left than the other.
You ever long for the old days before social media when all of this maybe felt a little less crazy? And maybe it was always this crazy, but we didn't see it because you weren't walking around with the world in your pocket?
Both things are true. It was far less crazy because the woke movement hadn't yet so totally metastasized and ossified that there was no alternative voice to be found in academia. There was no alternative voice to be found in mainstream media. There was no alternative. So it is crazier now because the crazies have solidified their hold on the political left. It's also crazier because the craziness is more instantly delivered and it's impossible to escape. It's in your hand. So it's crazier and it's faster crazy.
You have any worries about the right? So you create this coalition that in some sense it's a loose coalition. As you said, it could split down the road, which would be a better splitting than what we have with the Republicans and the Democrats now. But do you have any concerns that could go out of whack?
Oh, there's concern that if the left leaves us no alternative, then the only alternative is the far right, and that scares me more than if we split up and go back to how it had been, which are people with similar base values who have differences in matters of degree. Oh, we should tax more and have a bigger safety net. We should tax less. But there was never, is America evil? Do we need to destroy and then rebuild some utopian premise that only exists, as in the John Lennon song, in the imagination? But I don't worry about a lot of things. I'll tell you why. The best piece of advice I ever got was from our friend David Horowitz, who, may he rest in peace.
He just passed away, yeah.
He'll be missed. But I asked him at one point, how do you do it? How do you get up every morning knowing what you know, seeing what you see, being bombarded by what you're bombarded by? How do you get out of bed? And he said to me, Evan, I always remind myself the future has never been what I thought it was going to be. And so I stay out of the future. I do not extrapolate. Who knew in 2010 that some random guy on some minor cable channel would use the words Tea Party and it would change the course of history? And so I know that the future is not going to be an exact extrapolation of where we are now. So I fight the fight that's in front of me, and I live the life that God gave me.
Well, then my next question is going to be a little bizarre, but because you're also a Hollywood guy, I mean, what do you think? So I was going to ask you kind of what the future, it's funny you said future, because I was going to ask you what you think the future of Hollywood is, but maybe a better way to phrase it then, in light of what you said, is, do you think Hollywood, was it destined that it was going to get this out of control in some sense for some of the reasons that you described? Like that the radicals, when they took over the institutions, Hollywood was easily going to fall because it's really just a money-making machine and all of the parts are replaceable. The greatest actor is still replaceable. So it would be very easy to just decimate it the way it's been decimated. And where when I was 13, go to the movie theater and there were 10 movies I wanted to see. And now I haven't seen a new movie in 3 years.
Right. Well, they got a little big on themselves. They didn't recognize how easily they could be replaced, not only by other films from other countries, and but by all new technologies, and by the way, by not going to the movies. It's so easy that they just didn't anticipate, even though it was right in their face, that change was coming and that they'd better satisfy their audience. And so actually people don't realize this. Hollywood doesn't want to make popular movies. All right. The people behind them may or may not, but in order to get a star, they have to make a movie that's going to offend America because they don't want these stupid people to think they agree with us. They've got to be smarter than us. And the only way to be smarter than us, better than us, is to not give us the values we want to share.
Do you think they're wisening up to that? I mean, it does seem like maybe it's going away a little bit now, right?
Well, it's hard to think that when Disney keeps making the same mistakes over and over again. I mean, I realized years ago when Mel Gibson made the Passion of the Christ, right? Yeah. When he made the Passion of the Christ, at that moment, every studio should have been making a faith-based movie. And even to this day, they're not. Maybe that's throwing it up to one of the ancillary companies. But instead, you have to have Angel Studios making it and raking in the dough. And still, they're not doing it. So I think that they are so convinced that they are offering us a utopia. And the utopia that they are offering requires for there to be no God, be no patriotism, be no personal possessions except theirs, because only when everything is nothing is there nothing to kill or die for.
Tax day may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you miss the April 15th deadline or still owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait only makes things worse. The good news? There's still time for Tax Network USA to help. Self-employed or a business owner with messy books? Tax Network USA quickly organizes your finances and gets you back on track. Even post-deadline, a free consultation can help you act now to avoid penalties, threatening letters, and levies. So call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Dave. Let Tax Network USA help. Who's making you laugh these days? Besides yourself.
No, you made me laugh there. But there are so many whose names I don't necessarily recognize because I don't have the desire to sit and watch stand-up after all of these years. But Bill Burr can certainly make me laugh. Bill Maher can certainly make me laugh. But what thrills me is that this canker saw of wokeness, this fever blister of wokeness seems to have broken. And time after time, I get these reels on Facebook, one after another, of decidedly and intentionally and very much not PC comedians. And I'm laughing again.
Yeah, is that the strangest thing? I mean, at the height of wokeness, which also, of course, coincided with COVID, that anytime I'd see somebody doing stand-up, a lot of times it wasn't even in person. They were doing, these horrible Zoom things or whatever. But comedians in some sense became the most politically correct. And I was like, I mean, this is George Carlin just rolling over in his grave right now.
Yeah, well, they were just like George Carlin was the vanguard and the tip of the spear of that movement. They see themselves as the tip of the spear of the woke movement. And they see us as so evil because we are the antithesis of their utopia. If it wasn't for people like us, they would live in this paradise. And thus, they can't give an inch. If they laughed at themselves, they'd be weakening the revolution. And so they substituted vitriol for humor. And that's all there was nothing but vitriol. And look, there's a reason I was able to write for the Arsenio Hall show. Right? I was the voice of Black America.
Yeah,
right?
I kind of skimmed over your resume, but you've written for Arsenio, Politically Incorrect, Win Ben Stein's Money. That guy must have been hilarious off camera, right?
Oh yeah.
You've done stuff with Rush Limbaugh, Dennis Prager, Larry Elder. I mean, it's an all-star cast that you've been around for all these years.
Indeed. You want to hear the first joke I ever sold?
Let's go.
Okay. I sold it 22 years old. I sold it to Rodney Dangerfield, who was, my sex life is like a Star Wars character. Han Solo.
I saw.
And it was all uphill, all uphill from there.
That's pretty solid. Can I ask how much you sold a joke for back then?
Well, it depends who you sold it to. If I sold it to him, it was 50. If I sold it to Dreesen, it was 35. I'm still not over it.
Well, Dreesen never became quite as big as Rodney.
Oh, look, nobody became quite as big, but there was a time when Dreesen was the single most televised comedian of all because he was so well crafted and so mainstream in those positive ways that there was no show he didn't do.
Right. He would guest host a lot of the shows, I think.
He would guest host a lot. He is the only white comedian to ever appear on Soul Train.
Is that right?
That is true.
With that white hair, too. I mean, my God.
Well, he was, and I don't want to keep talking. I want to talk about me, but he was the only black and white comedy team ever. He and Tim went out to be Venus Flytrap in WKRP in Cincinnati. And I'm so sorry, Tim, but indeed. Okay, enough about him. More about me.
More about you. Well, actually, it's interesting. So you wrote for some of these guys, and one of the things that I think all the time now is that late night comedy. I mean, it's become so freaking political. It's unbearable. It's I long for the days of Johnny and everybody else. But even the way that we had people in Hollywood that could still be people. You had some guys like Rodney would go and do panel and be doing shtick, obviously. But then you'd have other guys that could get up there and just be normal. And we've lost that too. So we got a lot of things that we need to fix.
Indeed. Well, because everything on the political left, and actually it was David Horowitz who made this point as well, everything on the political left is for the revolution. The issue is never the issue, is what he said.
The issue is the revolution.
Everything's for the revolution. And even though they don't recognize many of them, the rank and file, and this is my real claim to fame as a conservative thinker is what people call the unified theory of liberalism, and why it is that so many good, smart, decent, loving, caring, generous people ignore fact and reason and side always with evil. How do you look at the Middle East and decide the problem isn't the homophobic, xenophobic, misogynistic, Islamic fascists? The problem's that tiny liberal democracy of Jews. How do you look at what went down in Ferguson, Missouri, and decide the problem isn't this career thug high on drugs who just strong-armed a local businessman? The problem is the white racist cop. How do you and get it so completely wrong? And the reason they do is because thinking was outlawed in the 1980s, because thinking is now seen as an act of bigotry. Indiscriminateness is a moral imperative because discrimination is homophobia, xenophobia, all these things. So in order to eliminate discrimination, they must be utterly indiscriminate.
So how do we deprogram people? I mean, this is probably the number one question that I still get asked now because I've had a little life experience doing it. But what do you think the best way to deprogram the people that are being, sold into this set of obvious lies?
Yeah. The good news is the bad news. And that is that so many of them are so miserable because they have nothing in their lives. They've been told, no countries, no religion. So they don't have God. They don't have patriotism. They don't have friends because they have no meaningful basis for a friendship. They don't have parents because their parents are their best friends. They don't have heroes because every hero is now an anti-hero. And they are so miserable that they are desperately searching. So it's not like you have to pluck them from the cult camp and knock the Kool-Aid out of their hands. They've turned and they're running towards us. What we have to do is be there and be capable of answering the questions when the time comes. That's why people like Jordan Peterson, they're searching. It's why Ben Shapiro, it's why it's why so many of these people who 5 years ago, if they knew who they were, it was under the covers where nobody would see them doing it. Now they're coming out to the TPUSA gatherings. They're coming out, they're searching. And so they are searching. That's half of our job. The other half is to be able to provide them with thoughtful, articulate answers.
Well, that I think we've gotten pretty good at explaining ourselves. I think the rest is just getting them. I talked about it on my show earlier this week. I mean, it's getting over what I did a video for PragerU called the bravery deficit, and just be a little bit braver and wake up, and then they get on their way. And then I suppose you're bullish on the future that we'll be able to make creative things again, and comedy can come back. And how about some new music or a movie that might be new? That would all be very refreshing, wouldn't it?
Indeed, I am bullish, but again, I thought of Trump's victory in 2016 as D-Day. All right, it didn't win the war for us, but had we lost it, the war was over. I thought of his victory in 24 as VE Day. I think that the fever blister of wokeism has been defeated, but now there's a Europe and a world that has been decimated. That needs almost the equivalent of an ideological, intellectual, and artistic Marshall Plan. We need to be aggressive. And so the one thing I will suggest to the layman, because you and I have a different platform to reach more people than the layman does, but we don't have to convince everybody. You have to convince one person each. What I say is that they own the media, at least they did until recently. We own the truth. That means they can hit 1 million people at once with their lies. We have to be 1 million people telling the truth to one person at a time. And so I have a program I call Adopt a Democrat. I find one person in your life who you know is not a left-wing fanatic. He hasn't read Das Kapital and is a Marxist. He just has never heard from a conservative what a conservative believes. And a mistake that we make, Dave, is we try to win the argument right there and then because it's so obvious how stupid they are, how wrong they are, how opposite of good, right, and truthful they are, that we think we could just, no. It's like raising a child. You plant the seed, you don't make everything a teachable moment, and over time, you will convert people. I've converted them, you've converted them. And just one more point, think about this. If we all change one person, we double our numbers.
Wait, then my last question is this. Is it an actual program that you have, or is it just a concept?
If you want to send money to help support the program, then yeah.
Evan, it's been an absolute pleasure. We will do this in person next time.
I look forward to it, Dave. Thanks so much.
If you're looking to laugh your ass off, check out our comedy playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a wide variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.